Right, so we got these chaps here, one of Morron's brigades. Let's see, they've got a morale of 6, but they are disordered and they're being attacked from the flank. They're being fired on the flank, which counts as a flank attack. So they have got a morale of 4, so they certainly have a decent chance of failing their morale test. And if they do, because they're disordered, they will rout. And they have failed their morale test. Yes, even if, apart from the, even if they had only had one of those conditions, they would fail their morale test. So they, what happens, which direction do they rout in? Towards, I would imagine it would be, because in other words, they're not routing because they've just lost a melee. They're routing because they've lost their will to remain where they are. So if it was directly away from the nearest enemy, but I don't seem to remember anything like that. If they had to route towards their line of communication is sort of over there. So it's like up there by the frozen lake. So that would mean going that way. They're not going to run into the enemy. I'll have to look that up. Okay, let's do that. Okay, right. So they were here-ish. They're routed. If they are not in contact with the enemy and they rout, they have to route towards their line of communication, which, as I explained, is over there up by the frozen lake at the top of the screen there. And so the only way they can get there, they will not close with the enemy. They won't try to pass through the enemy, as you might imagine. They have to remain 100 yards away from the enemy. So that means that they were there and they went that way. In so doing, happily for the French, they did not pass through their own forces within the first half of that. So they didn't disorder them by moving through them. They ended up there. They took another casualty. And they are routed, of course, and that extra casualty meant that Morron's division is now exhausted, and we've marked him thus, and we've marked them, well, they're routed. He is marked as exhausted, that's right, and we're supposed to, if we can find one, can't see one lying around. I'm going to have to borrow a dead Russian, I think. There we go. Yeah, just do that. Pop that on there to remind us that that's an exhausted division. There we go. Okay. So that means we can pretty well forget any significant French threat from being down here for the rest of the battle, surely. Oh, well, we've got some artillery down there. More artillery here, I suppose. Zoom out a bit. As I said, the cuirassiers might be able to just about get down here in 3 turns. Whether they'd have enough time to actually attack anyone, I don't know about that. But, okay. Let's see. So we were doing morale tests, weren't we? Yes, right. So let's carry on with our morale tests. Okay, so that was Morron, and yes, right. So let's just roll them up and see what we get. So we'll roll here for Goudin, one of his brigades, who are rolling because they're receiving close-range artillery fire. And yeah, we'll do this. If we roll an obviously good number, we won't worry about the details. We've got the Russians here. They're rolling to test because they're receiving fire from here. It is flanking fire. They've rolled a 1, so they passed. We'll sort of speed things up a little bit without going into all the detail. As we said before, if they get a good number, it doesn't matter all that morale test detail, although it is instructional for folks who are not familiar with Volley and Bayonet. And then we'll roll up for these chaps here and see how they're feeling today, or this hour, I should say. Okay, they've rolled a 2, so they're fine as well. All right, so that's the morale test done. Let's do some combat. Right, combat-wise, one of the first things going to happen, this unit here can no longer fire. It's a light horse battery. They have a long range of 800 yards, and the closest enemy of these chaps here, they're too far away, so they actually can't fire it anymore. They were originally going to fire at the infantry, but the infantry ran away. Okay, and let's see. So now we've got this lot can fire on these chaps. There's no melee there, so we would do this combat in the sense of, yeah, we don't. Yeah, let's just get on with it. Right. Okay. So here, we'll do the close range one first to remember that we're hitting on 4, 5, 6, and there we have a hit. Okay. There's no saving throw there. Nobody is disordered. Okay. Then next up, and we got a miss there, and then next up, this is not close range, and we got a miss there. Okay. So we have one hit on the French there. Then we have the French firing at the infantry, hitting on 6s, as we might imagine. We have nothing there. And then the hot, fiery fusillade coming in from the Russians with their dedicated guns, stationary at the French. And they've got a hit. Okay, there we go. All right. And so we've got 2 hits on them. Then in a separate action, I suppose we can roll for that shot at them there. Okay, so there are 2 hits on the French. That's going to be 4 hits in total on that unit. And I would not be surprised if that wipes them out. Right. Wiped out they were. Gautier's brigade of Goudin's division. Goudin is now the owner of an exhausted division. That's what he's got left. Division is exhausted. Okay, things are crumbling for the French. They had to go in hard and just pound against the Russians to make something happen. I think something similar happened in the real battle, in that there were, Ney said something like, I don't know, something like enormous casualties for no result. Yes. Right, so they've shuffled off this mortal coil. All right, and these chaps are now ready to fire at the musketeers. Let's see if they can get some sort of vengeance there. They are stationary and they are short range or close range, so hitting on 4, 5, 6s, and they've got nothing. No revenge there, I'm afraid. Okay. Right, so now we have... Oh, not looking good for these chaps, as we might imagine. Desjardins division. We've got, who's that? Lapis. Yeah, Lapis Infantry Brigade. Yeah, he's got incoming fire of 13 dice and outgoing fire of 2. So, all right, but this is not a melee, so we don't have to decide sort of who won the melee or whatever. Modifying factors, nobody's disordered, so we can just roll these up as we go through. All right, and let's see what sort of unspeakable slaughter there is this time. Right, here we go. Well, there's 2 hits on the French right there. Okay, 2 hits. Very good. And then we get these 3 coming in from the next brigade. Nothing there. And then we get 5 shots coming in from the next brigade. There we are. Oh, look at that. 2 more hits. Surely 4 hits is enough to wipe out that brigade. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's have a look. Right, well, they were wiped out, but I forgot to roll for them, so they've still got 2 shots. So they're shooting at those chaps right there, Kamensky, and they didn't score anything. Right, okay. So, yes, the floor is being sort of wiped with the French at this point. As I say, they had to do it. We've been over that before. They didn't have any choice other than to just march forward and accept desperate, tragic losses. So, okay, so he has now, he has an exhausted division, and all he's got left is this unit over here, which is routed and has been waiting most of the battle to see if anyone will be so kind as to come over and rally them. Okay, Right, let's mark them with a figure to show that they are part of an exhausted division. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if you had an exhausted division. Can you rally from rout? Seems unlikely. Yes, have to check that one. But no, the reason why have they been there so long? Why hasn't anyone rallied them? Well, it's because their corps commander has always been too busy. Old Marshal Augereau, who's over here, has been too busy keeping an eye on the corps artillery and the corps cavalry, commanding them. In other words, it's been would have been taking up far too much of his time to come over here, because he would have taken one turn to come over here, and then he would have been present there to rally them, and okay, right, moving on. There was a technical term at the end there. Right, moving on. So, looking a bit grim for the French. I mean, it's been looking grim for the French the entire battle, quite honestly. I mean, what could be seen of it through the snow? Right, okay, so now then, and it's going to get even worse for the French over here, isn't it? Yes, probably. So they're going to be picking in a big way on the artillery. Right, so a roll for the artillery, which is of course disordered, so that means that any hits it scores will get saving throws, so they're going to fire straight ahead at them, and they missed them anyway. Okay, all right. And then back come the fire. Well, let's see, this artillery unit, I mean, generally speaking, artillery unit is going to be on average worth 2 strength points. So they've got incoming fire of what is that, 12 dice. Yes, that is heavy artillery. Can't remember. Well, let's just see if anybody gets any hits first of all. Okay, so here we go. Right, here come the musketeers firing away, and they have scored 1 hit. Okay, and then next batch of infantry, which is again musketeers, as it turns out, with their dedicated guns. Used to be called battalion guns back in the olden days. Right. Some habits die hard. It's hard to yes. So now, well, no, hang on a minute. Keep your mouth shut. Right. So now we'll roll for the artillery, and I'll roll for them separately, or I'll store the results separately. Let's see. They're firing at close range, so they actually have 2 hits. Okay, that's the artillery scoring 2 hits on them, because I can't remember how much of this gets saving throws. I think it probably all does. That was it. Okay, they don't get saving throws from incoming fire coming from heavy artillery. They would get saving throws for that, but they wouldn't get saving throws for that. So that's 2 hits right there that can't be saved. That's 3 hits against that artillery unit. I'm sure they have been destroyed by that. So I'm actually going to put the dice away. That means that unit is destroyed. Right, so just following through as sort of a rules explanation here, that means that these chaps are eliminated. We'll take those off. That means that Saint-Hilaire, his division, took another hit. Even though they're exhausted, you would check for morale collapse, but the little red markers we're now using indicate they're already collapsed, so that we don't have to test for that, because it can't get any worse, as it were. They've already collapsed. Right, so let's get rid of, let's see, let's tidy up a bit. Right, so there was some testing for morale collapse, and there was 1 division morale collapse, and that was Desjardins over here. It's not terribly important, because, as we say, his only unit is the routed unit over here. So yeah, Goudin tested, I believe, and passed, and I think maybe Mohan tested and passed as well. Okay, so let's see, Goudin, I need to mark them. Yeah, here's an interesting example, because these are, they've got their division just became exhausted, Goudin, but they are stationary. If you're already stationary, if I remember the rules correctly, you don't lose it when your division you don't lose stationary when your division becomes exhausted. You can't gain it again if you lose it for whatever reason, but if you're already stationary and you stay put, there we go, just marking that to make sure we know he's an exhausted division. If you stay put, then you still have your stationary. Okay. Yeah, so now it means that down here, what have the French got? As I said, they could move down here. It would take them a long time. So for right now, they've got artillery here, they've got artillery here, artillery here. Generally not in a terribly good way. Although actually, interestingly enough, I mean the artillery there, they've taken no losses, They're stationary. They've taken one hit. But now finally we might be able to get to a point. Let's see, that's Kamensky. That's Kamensky. So, and they are, because of careful positioning, they will be in command in the Russian turn. So for example, Kamensky here, they could move forward into this sort of a position down here. The cavalry could move forward down here. Osterman Tolstoy's cavalry could move forward down here to block off any French designs down in this direction. Here we have one more turn in which, you know, the half turn of Rule 6, turn 6 rather, the Russians have got through that without any more casualties on old Fabian von der Ostensacken over there. Where is he? Let's point him out. There we go. He's there, of course, right? So they are still not exhausted, which is very frustrating for the French because they're only 2 casualties away from it. So with only 3 turns left to go, and Kamensky, as I say, he's completely untouched, so he's still 9 hits away from division exhaustion. So I'm beginning definitely to start. I'd be betting money that there's no way the French can win this, but we'll keep playing. We've only got 3 more turns. We'll keep playing to see how much progress they made, because it's always interesting to see, well, how closely balanced was the scenario. And of course, you know, it all depends on the dice, and it also depends on how capable the commanders were. You know, have I been playing the Russian side well or badly? Have I been playing the French side well or badly? We shall see. Right. And yes, the sharp-eyed observers will have noted that I was wrong over there about Saint-Hilaire's division, because the fact that they have had a morale collapse doesn't mean that you don't have to roll for it again if they take casualties, which they did. And I rolled and they passed. They did not have another morale collapse, because if they had, then any units in the division which are disordered, and as we can see using my special high-tech pointer device here, there we go, that would be that unit there and that unit over there, those 2 brigades are already disordered. And if you have a second or an additional morale collapse, anyone disordered routes to the rear. But that didn't happen, so just saying, I looked that up and just trying to correct myself there. Right. And another one for the sharp-eyed observers. Boy, it's hard to keep all this in your noggin when you're just playing it solo, you know. But anyway, yes, I seem to have gone on at length about the fact that if the division becomes exhausted, but units within it are stationary, they do not lose the stationary status when the division becomes exhausted. Well, according to the rules, the actual rule book itself, you understand, apparently they do. So I've corrected that. Let's see, they were stationary, so they've lost that because they were exhausted this turn. They were stationary too over here, and they've lost that. So hopefully I've cleaned that up a bit. Don't know where I got that idea. I swear I saw that recently. Maybe it was on a... I do have an excellent reference sheet. I'll have to check it, because maybe there's a mistake on there. I've written a lot of notes on it, and I could have written the mistake on it myself. Anyway... Okay, we are doing the 7th French turn. It is 2 p.m. on the 8th of February 1807 here at Eylau. And we can see that the French are just doing whatever they can, in for a penny, in for a pound. They're just throwing everything they can into the fray to try and cause those casualties that they need to be able to exhaust the Russian divisions. Osterman Tolstoy, as we've said before, down here, his division's exhausted, so that's already been achieved down there. But we've got Kamensky here, which is brand new. They can take 9 hits before they get exhausted. Down here, Bagavut, he's still got 7 hits before they get exhausted. And there are still stubbornly over there. We've got the resolute chaps on the hill there. Von der Ostensachen's chaps. And they've got 2 more hits before they get exhausted. And finally, the French have decided to throw in the cavalry. Famous cavalry charge, of course, at Eylau, recreated in many films and all that sort of thing. But anyway, we've got the cuirassiers going in, we've got the dragoons going in, and So we shall see. Now, if we go through then down here, we've got, that's right, Marshal Davout down here. The first instance we've seen of rallying routers. So when they rally, they can have a free facing change, but they cannot move and they cannot participate in combat. So they're just there. They're rallied now, but they are permanently disordered. Here we have a bit of shuffling's been going on with artillery. They've moved themselves into position to be able to fire on those chaps there. That results in them taking a morale test. They're not firing at anybody else who can fire back at them. None of these guns can fire because no one's firing at them and they're not in close range. Okay, let's see. What else have we got? Right, there's been some movement down here towards the enemy. It's probably close to getting close to suicidal for these chaps here, because although they're not going to have a lot of incoming fire, they're going to have close range fire from the artillery, of course. No musketry coming at them because they're not shooting at the musketeers, so the musketeers can't fire back and do their counterattack, as it's called in V&B. But they are firing at the guns. The reason that they moved into that position was to stop the guns from firing at the cavalry, because I'm adjudicating that the artillery, well, as we can see, clearly doesn't have a fire lane to fire at the cavalry. So it's just to keep the fire off the cavalry so that the cavalry can get stuck into the infantry here. So we've had, who is he? Nonsuti. Apologies for pronunciation. There he is there. He's got his finest unit, the Morale 7 Cuirassiers. They're actually, what are they? They're Carabiniers. So I've got them, but I haven't got them painted up yet. So although those look like Cuirassiers, they should be Carabiniers, which are the sort of, the best of the best, as it were, the heaviest of the heaviest. Anyway, so they got Morale 7, they're heavy cavalry, they're going in there, they're hitting them. These, of course, are stationary with dedicated guns, so they've got 7 dice, for goodness sake. They've only got 4 dice, but we've also had a unit of dragoons from over here, which could see them, so they've charged across here so they can count as hitting them in the flank, which, rearranging the light cavalry down here. Oops, there we go. Got stuck on my shirt. Right, okay. So they're going in there. And then also there was a brigade here of D'Espagne's division. Here's the other one there. And they were able to see down this way. They were able to see the Hussars down there. And so they've galloped up there to get stuck into them. Right. So they've got 4 dice, of course, as one might imagine. All right. So that's a pretty even contest right there, more or less. If there's a tiebreaker, they would have an advantage because they're a heavier kind of cavalry. But we've already seen one unit of Cuirassiers bounce off those chaps. So, we'll see what happens there. And then moving down, we've just got these chaps plinking away at von der Ostensachen's troops, trying to score more casualties. Not a lot of hope down there. It's only 3 dice, but there we go. And then what else do we have? Yes, because of course one has to keep in mind that these chaps here, the light cavalry here, they belong to Bagavut. They do not belong to von der Ostensachen. So if casualties are caused on them, that affects this division here. Right, okay. So I think we should move on to our morale tests. Right, let's see what the Russians do down here. They've got incoming fire here from their flank. Let's roll up first and see if we... No, they rolled a 1. They're fine. Right, okay. Right, we do all the morale tests first. Let's not get distracted and do the combat down there. Do all the morale tests first. Do it by the book. Okay, so they're taking a test because they've got incoming fire coming in from the artillery there. All right, so this is the French with a morale of 5. They're fine. Okay, let's see. Now, very important rolls here. Because we've got incoming... We got the cavalry coming in here. Now, they are attacking them in the flank, which gives them a adjustment on their morale. They're being attacked by the flank, which gives them an adjustment on their morale. This is very important, so I'm going to look at the table this time. They got a -1, they got a +1. They don't get any adjustment. Right. So, they are morale 5. Let's do the Russians. They get a -1 on their morale, so they've now got a morale of 4. Aha! And, my dear chaps and chapettes, they have failed their morale test. This is crucial. So they are now disordered. You see? Yes. Now then, that also means... Let's see if these second-rate tweezers work. It also means, you see, you can't be disordered and stationary. So they're no longer stationary. That was exactly the result that the French were desperate to have. Okay. Now, as long as if the French can just keep it together here. They have a morale of 7. No adjustments. They cannot. Oh, they're going to take a clobbering, aren't they? Yes, yes. They cannot fail their morale test. So we'll just did that for form, as I said, but we know that that can't fail. They have a morale of 5, but they got a +1 because they're attacking the enemy in the flank. That means they have a morale of 6, which means they can't fail their morale test. So there's that. Looking good for the French. Now, if you have formed cavalry that are... Oh, good Lord, I'm rearranging the light cavalry again. Excuse me. Right. If you have formed cavalry that are not disordered, and they are attacking an enemy that is disordered, they hit on 5s and 6s. Oof. So, surely to goodness, there may even be a possibility here that they could just wipe the unit out. But it's highly likely that they're going to win the melee, which would mean that they would rout them and so forth and so on. I wonder how... Let's just take a quick peek and see. Let's see that regiment down there, which is like Poltoski or something like that. How many strength points does it have? It's sorry about that. It's the brigade is they're Polotsk, and they've got 3 strength points. So there's a very high possibility here that the French will wipe them out. Okay. Anyway, we're still doing morale tests, so let's press on. We've got these chaps here. Well, let's just roll first and see if they roll. If they roll low, we won't have anything to worry about. But okay, well, they're morale 5, and they've rolled a 5. So if they have any bonuses, they don't have any bonuses. I'm counting them as... am I counting them as... sorry about that. I suppose in V&B terms, they would... No, they're not. They're not uphill of the enemy, as far as I'm concerned. So, anyway, so I'm just going to say they're fine. They're fine. They passed the morale test. Okay. And then for the cuirassier, who came from D'Espagne's division. Who is that? Looks like something like... is that Foulier or Fouillère? Can't quite read it. Okay, let's roll him up. Now, he's rolled a 5. Okay, so he has a morale of 6, of course. Is there anything affecting him? No, I'm saying he didn't go uphill to fight the enemy. So there is no modifier there. No. Okay, so they passed the morale test. So, right. Okay. So we've done our morale tests. We have indeed. And we're ready for combat. All right. Here we have Regiment Bielozersk. We're going to fire at them. Close range, 4.56. And so miss. Okay. And the same thing here. 4.56. And we've got a hit. There's no saving throw. So that's a hit on them. Bielozersk. They can take 3 hits. I looked it up. Let's mark that. So there's our hit. So first blood against Kamensky's division. But as I said, they're going to have to do 8 more to exhaust it. So it's a start, but it may be too late. The French have only got 2 more turns after this. So it looks like, it surely looks like there's no way that much damage is going to be done to Kamensky. Now, Bagavout, on the other hand, I don't know. We'll see about that, especially if they can bash them. So let's see. Right, so just plinking away here. We just got these chaps firing at the artillery, which means that, unless I'm mistaken, it means that the artillery is going to get saving throws for incoming fire. All right, we didn't get anything anyway. Fine. Then comes the artillery firing at us, firing at the infantry, hitting on 4.56. Yeah, with no other... oh, miss there. Okay, right. Fair enough. Desultory fire. Right, so now we've got... now there's the crucial one. Well, of course, we could do that one. The question now, of course, is... because, of course, the attacker can resolve the combats in any order he or she wishes. So... you may wish to coordinate them so that they will sort of cause as much damage to the enemy as possible. So let's take a look at this. Okay, we'll film this live while the actual tactical decision is being made. If they were able to, let's see, they can't rout them because they're not already disordered, so they could cause them to retreat, obviously. That means that they, being light cavalry, would retreat half their normal move, which would be 1,200 yards. So they would get to about that point there-ish. They're not going to pass through any friends when they do that because they're moving directly away from the enemy. So they're going to go back down there. They'd end up sort of slightly on top of the village by the look of it. They're not going to interact with anyone else. I suppose you could look at this and you could say, if they, let's see, they're not going to cause them to retreat because, well, no, wait a minute. No, yeah, okay, technically the French, if they rolled terrible dice, they could lose the melee and they would remain in where they are, and the French would have to retreat. But, so we know they're not going to retreat. If they're going to move backwards, they're going to rout because they're already disordered. So if they rout, they'll move away from the center of the mass of the enemy, which is basically here. So they're going to go sort of that way, again, straight to the village. But if they're routing, they're going to move 1,600 yards. So that's going to be to more or less the same position that they would move to, because they move a full move, because they would be routing, yes. So the question is, do I want to try and do something clever and have, the infantry rout into the light cavalry that are there in the village? Or do I say that I want the light cavalry to retreat into the routed infantry? I think I'll attack the infantry first, to be honest with you. So let's do that. Right. Okay. So first we'll have the incoming from the infantry. We split it as evenly as possible between the two enemies. And of course, saving throws on all the dice because they are disordered. Right. They do have 7 dice, however, to roll. So let's... can we get all 7 in there without getting congested? Yes, we can. Okay. So here we go. Plucky chaps. What are they? The Polotsky? I don't know. Polotsk. Okay, right. So they have scored 1 hit. Okay, and we will see. They automatically get a saving throw because the enemy is disordered. And they got a saving throw, so the hit didn't count. So the Russians have scored no hits on the French. So it certainly looks like the French are going to win the melee. And if they do that, then that means that the Russians will rout. Okay, well, let's just get on with it and see how many casualties they cause. Okay, I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. Well, might as well. Let's just do it. Let's see. We've got Non-Souti. Let's see, who was that? De France Heavy Brigade. We're literally using the Heavy Brigade here. The Carabinieri, excuse me. Oh, well, it scored 1 hit. Okay, there we are. Very good. And then we have the chaps from... who are they? That's right, they're dragoons from Beaumont, coming from over there. There we are, lovely. Hitting the chaps in the flank. And, there we go. That put paid to that lot. 3 hits. So that wipes out the unit fair and square. Okay, well, I think we know who won the melee. Now, let's have a look at that, because I think we might have to consider a cavalry breakthrough here. Let's look at that. Okay, looked up all the details, and I think I've got this right. Haven't seen a lot of cavalry breakthroughs, but anyway, so they wiped the floor with the regiment. It says Polotsk, but I dare say it's Polotsky, surely. I don't know. Anyway, okay, and that meant that they had, the attacking cavalry had the option to do a cavalry breakthrough move, and one of them has and one of them hasn't. Okay, the dragoons here, if you wipe out your enemy like that, what you do is you can go forward up half your move, straight forward. So they go straight forward, and that means they hit them. Okay? However, in choosing to do a cavalry breakthrough, it means that they become permanently disordered, so I've marked them thus. However, that doesn't apply until combat. It doesn't apply for the morale test that they have to now do, because they've contacted subsequent enemy. If they can pass that morale test, remember they're not disordered. Actually, they don't have to pass the morale test, so that may disorder them, etc., etc. Okay, so even if they were disordered by the morale test, the cavalry breakthrough, permanent disordering, doesn't cause them to rout. It doesn't work like that. So anyway, they will be joining them in attacking the light cavalry. They will be disordered in the combat, so it basically means their dice are worth half as much. But at least they'll have put a bit more oomph into that attack there. So the attack here obviously went very well. And the reason that these chaps are not doing cavalry breakthrough is because, of course, if they just go running off down here, that means that in the next turn, they will be out of command and no good to anyone. So we're not having that. Also, we have a situation here where because those infantry, well, they've survived thus far. So in the next turn, the artillery here, the close range artillery, which we can imagine is firing canister and all kinds of horrible stuff, they are not going to be able to fire at the cavalry because they don't have a clear fire lane to them. So they're protected. I mean, generally protected, not protected in the technical sense in the Volley and Bayonet rules, which only applies to infantry and artillery anyway, as near as I can remember. Good Lord, this is all terribly exciting. Right, so the next thing to do is we have to resolve this combat before we move on to any other combats. First thing we have to do is a morale test on the dragoons there from Beaumont. Who is it again? Maubourg, I suppose you'd say. Maubourg or Maubourg. Okay, let's have a look. They rolled a 4. Okay, they're not disordered yet, remember. And they're morale 5. So I adjudicate that they're absolutely fine. Okay, now they're permanently disordered, and now they're ready to do their melee. So we've got the light cavalry here. So they've got 4 dice, hitting on 6s, of course. Yes, hang on a minute. Does that mean that their dice against the... I think it does. Let me just check that. I think that they should be hitting them on 5s and 6s. All right, yes, I think I'm doing this correctly. There is cavalry shock involved. They're disordered. They're not disordered. They're formed cavalry. So therefore, they're rolling 4 dice for melee, 2 against them, 2 against them. But they will be hitting them with 5s or 6s. The same, just to back up, the same was true here. Of course, we established that. But when I rolled the dice, I only counted 6s. And I think they also got a 5. It didn't make any difference because it only took 3 hits to kill them anyway. So, but that was a factor there. So first I'm going to roll for the Russian light cavalry against the dragoons, who are disordered, hitting on 5s and 6s. So didn't make any difference anyway. Okay, and then we're going to roll for the hussars, the Russian hussars, against the French cuirassiers. And they got nothing. They got nothing. Not looking good for the Russians. Okay. The French finally going to get a breakthrough? Well, let's see here. Well, they already have technically under the rules, but anyway. All right, so first of all, the disordered meleeing coming in from the dragoons. And look at that, they've got 2 hits there. Okay, but those 2 hits both qualify for saving rolls, of course, because they are a disordered unit inflicting the casualties. And no saves. Oh my gosh. I'm sure that's it. Most cavalry units only have 2 strength points, so that would wipe them out completely. Just to rub it in, let's keep going with the cuirassier, just to see how many hits we could have scored. So these chaps will be hitting on 6s, of course. In we go. And look at that. We've got, excuse me, we got another hit. So we got 3 hits on those. So surely Bagavut's Hussar Regiment. Who is that? Looks like it's Alexandrov. Is surely going to be wiped out by that. Let's take care of that. All right, well, this is all terribly exciting because it now means that Bagavut, there he is, old Bagavut, old, what is he? Karl Fyodorovich Bagavut is, he's 2 strength points away from exhaustion. Good Lord. Okay, now the French commander has decided that, so of course these 2 units now could continue their cavalry breakthrough. If you've eliminated the enemy, then you charge straight forward, or you move straight forward. That would bring them just in contact with them. They would just clip them there. Because of their angle, they can't count as a flank attack. They would be permanently disordered. So they're effectively worth about two dice. They would be able to fight back in the melee with 7 dice. So I don't want to do that. Or rather the French commander, who I know very well, doesn't want to do that. Now, it does mean that in the subsequent turn, yes, it means that the old grenadiers here can use 5 fire dice against them. But they are cavalry, so they get saving throws. They might be able to sort of trade and scooch back, retiring 600 yards and all that sort of thing. It was considered, these chaps here, because they're permanently disordered, it was considered sort of like, well, you might sort of think of them as a sort of throwaway unit at this point. They're permanently disordered, so why not just have them charge straight ahead, which they could do. They could just come straight down to about here-ish. They're allowed to move half their, let's get the dice out of the way, half their normal move. So that's 24 for them. So they'd be able to make it down to the village here. But then if they're there, as I said, they would then be out of command in the next turn. So the Russians would know that the French would not in their turn be able to advance upon them. So they'd basically be stuck there. But I suppose if the French commander could then move down there, he could sort of rally them up and or get them moving, get them back in command and get them moving on into the Russian rear. The problem with that is that if he goes down, well, I suppose he could go down there. I'm thinking this through. He could go down there in the Russian turn and take them along too. So in anticipation of that, I suppose the Russian commander would think, we've got to do something about that cavalry there. But they can't charge them with their cavalry because their cavalry is an exhausted division. I suppose they could turn around and shoot at them, which is a good thing because it means that it's taking them away from dealing with chaps up here. They could wheel down a bunch of artillery if they had horse artillery. These are heavy, no good there. Horse artillery there is only one that they could, in other words, limber, move and unlimber. No, they're heavy. What am I saying? Heavy, heavy, heavy. And they're horse artillery, although they're disordered. Let me think. Maybe it would be a good idea to send them down there. Well, there we go. The dragoons have sailed on through, and they're on the outskirts of Kleinsausgarten. Yeah, so that means I've marked them as out of command in advance. It means that they will be out. That's just a reminder that they will be out of command in the following French turn. So the Russians now have got French cavalry in their rear, even though they're in a bad way. But as I say, if the Russians don't do anything about them, then their commander, which is Beaumont, he's here, and there are the rest of his chaps there. The dragoons here and Beaumont could all move up here, back here. Then in the subsequent turn, they would be in command. That would be the last turn of the battle, though. Okay, but it's a thought. Okay, it leaves option open. Beaumont, if he wants to, depending on what the French do in their turn, can just write them off. Can just say, okay, sorry guys, you figure out what to do, and instead use these decisively in some sort of charging around here. Because, of course, the problem the French have got right now, stating the obvious, is this great big hole here, okay? And wouldn't you know it, yes, I've knocked the light cavalry off the table again. Hang on. Anyway, that's what's going on. Let's press on then. Yes, good old Preston the Wargamer, Preston decided to press on. You see, that's what I do. I pressed on. Right. So down here we've got the artillery, French artillery, plinking away, trying to score some casualties. Those desperately needed 2 more casualties on the von der Ostensachen down here. So if he's firing at them, it's not close range. So he's hitting on 6s, but there are no saving throws. And he missed on that one, okay. And then finally for this turn, we've got a lot of incoming Russian fire, don't we? Yes, we do. So these chaps down here, the remnant of Saint-Hilaire, they're in a very bad way, but they can still shoot, although they are disordered. Let's see what they can manage to do. 2 disordered shots going up the hill here. Shooting at, who are we shooting at? Let's give it a bit of flavour. Regiment, Dnieper, yep, as in the river. Right, and they've missed. They were looking for 6s, okay. And now they're going to get it coming back at them. Fully 5 dice, fiery musketry coming back at them. Whoops, there we go. Got nothing. Desultory fire. It's all that snow you see. Snow falling down. Snowy. Coming down. Right. Okay. So, yeah, you know it's snowing because look at all the snowballs. Right. Should have a snowman somewhere. Right. Okay. So, they got off lightly there, for sure. But still no more casualties. There wasn't much hope of it, but still no more casualties caused on von der Ostensachen. So they're hanging on, but they've got a bit of a loose flank sort of a number going on now. So it'll be interesting to see down there, of course, down in that neck of the woods, let's zoom in a little bit here. There we go. Down in that neck of the woods, other end of the battlefield, where the remnants of Osterman Tolstoy division, they haven't got a lot going on down there. So I mean, if they could, those cavalry are under command, so they could bolt. They could take the cavalry, so they are useful for blocking. So the cavalry down there could bolt down here to try and fill in this gap. Let's see, the light cavalry, or the yeah, there are no heavies down there. Are they heavies? No, they're dragoons. That's right. So dragoons and hussars, they can both move. Let's zoom back out again. Getting dizzying. They can both move 2,400 yards. So the dragoons could, let's see, just about get to about here. Although that might be tricky for them. See, now they're actually in a good position. Yes, they're in a sort of blocking position to stop cavalry here moving up here and getting into that position there. So actually, yeah, that turned out really nicely, didn't it? Yes. Press forward. Puncture the enemy line. Yes. Penetration. You ask Alexander the Great. He was all for it. You know, what was it? At Gaugamela. Yes, that's the chap. Right. Anyway, terribly exciting developments. I'm glad the French cavalry finally got involved and were able to rattle their sabres and do something productive. They have got some of their lovely armour dirty, but, you know, there we go. And things are developing, but it does look like they have a shot at exhausting Bagavout, for sure. It's only 2 casualties away. They've already exhausted Tolstoy, Osterman Tolstoy, and they're only 2 away from exhausting von der Ostensacken. So that means that it's all down to Kamensky. But as I said before, they've only scored, 1 hit on Kamensky. So they'd have to score another 8 hits in 2 turns, which the thing I like about it, though, is it means that it does look like it is going to come down to being a pretty darn close contest. Which I love. You know, whenever you play a war game, I over the last several years I've mainly been playing board war games, and so you know, Avalon Hill, GMT, this sort of thing. For some reason, the names are not rattling off my head. What is it? Compass. Apologies, I can't think. Right, White Dog. Is it White Dog? Yeah. Games, anyway, all sorts of excellent games, dozens, I would even say. And there's nothing, I don't know if there's nothing better, but it's a really good feeling when you get to the end of the game and it was a very close contest. You know, you sort of achieved your victory only on the very last turn or something like that. So I don't think the French are going to be able to win this battle, but it looks like they are going to be able to come awfully close to it. Right, okay, so now we go on to Russian turn 7, 2 p.m.